to Facebook. So if you're tuning in on Facebook, be sure to drop us a comment. And if you've got any great pictures, be sure to put a picture in the comments.
Absolutely. So that photo actually came to us from Chief Meteorologist at KOCO in Oklahoma City, Damon Lane, who was my mentor in college. So Damon is a hobbyist pilot himself, avid traveler, and it's safe to say that he did not make it back for the 5 o'clock newscast yesterday in Oklahoma City like he was supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that in those types of situations, if you're in that seat, do you call in from the airport? What do you do? How do you keep the show going?
So the nice thing about KOCO and basically all of the stations in Oklahoma City is because they're such a weather-heavy market, they've got backups on backups on backups that are staffed there. So they were plenty fine. Normally for an evening show, they would have 2 Mets on staff in the office anyways, so they were all right.
Gotcha. Very cool. Well, yeah, Kaylee is our resident meteorologist along with Dr. Scott Dennsteadt, and they are the ones that keep up with the weather and make sure that we know what's going on.
There you go. All right. Thanks for that, Damon, and miss you guys out there in Oklahoma City. We're going to go ahead and welcome in our first live guest of the show. We've got Edward Leverton with us, who is Vice President of Flight Operations over at Piedmont. And we're continuing this pilot pipeline segment kind of twofold today with both of our guests, right? Starting off with this conversation about Piedmont specifically working to recruit their talent.
Yeah, so, we've been exploring this, and we're going to explore it into 2023. The pilot shortage is at the top of everybody's mind. Mm-hmm. We're going to find out what Piedmont's doing with some announcements that they've had, talking about recruiting some of the best and getting them into their pilot pipeline, into their talent pipeline. So we're going to welcome Edward on. Edward, thanks for being with us.
Hey, good afternoon. Great to be here.
So I want to kick off this segment, and I want to talk about some of the announcements. You guys have been in the news here recently with some of the programs that you've been working on to help fill some of that pilot needs that you guys have at the regional level. So wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of go over the program, talk to us about some of the qualifications and what the response that you guys have seen so far.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Yeah, we back in June, we introduced really industry-leading wages, especially for the regional industry. So we brought wages for the first officers up to $90 an hour, and for the captains up to $146. And what we've done more recently is we're structuring our bonuses to really target pilots that have the experience to be captains. So what we've done is we are offering pilots with that experience $100,000 on day one. Those pilots that can be captains for us on day one. In addition, we are offering $75,000 to what we call high time FOs. And those are pilots with hours that contribute to being a captain, but aren't quite at the 1,000 hour requirement yet. So really excited about this program. Since June, the reception has been immense. We've hired over 400 pilots this year, and it's really been great.
So by targeting some of those first officers, what you're trying to do is you're trying to fill in a part of that pipeline. Walk us through, this concept of the pipeline, right? So straight out of, whether it's a fast track program or whether it's out of university, walk us through what does that pipeline look like for those pilots once they enter in, right? So maybe they enter in at a lower time, maybe they're entering in at that high time that you're looking for. What are each of the phases that you guys have for those that are unfamiliar with how it works in the regionals?
Yeah, sure. So, we sort of have 3 tiers, right? We have the cadet program, which is, and in that program, we're targeting those pilots that are still gathering their hours to be able to join the airline. Still don't have those hours to have their ATP yet. So with the cadet program, we will help you build your hours. So you'll get $30,000 and a guaranteed position at Piedmont Airlines, and then of course the guaranteed flow to American Airlines once your seniority number hits. In addition, we have essentially what we call hiring off the street first officers, and those are first officers that have the time requirements to be first officers. And then, and this is really what I want to stress, is we're really targeting pilots that have the experience to be captains, because that's where we have our deficit. We talk a lot in the industry about a pilot shortage. What we're experiencing at Piedmont is really a captain shortage. our growth is constrained by the amount of captains we have. And we're an airline that's trying to grow. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to incentivize pilots that have the experience to be captains to come to Piedmont. Because really, there's only two ways for a pilot, for us to make a captain. We either hire outside the industry, hire within the industry, or we essentially build our own, right? And we allow the current crop of first officers to be able to accumulate the necessary time.
Edward, do you have any type of statistics on what those folks entering the Piedmont space actually look like percentages of folks entering as new first officers, percentages of first officer hires off the street, like that at all?
Sure. Our vast majority are, over the last year, have been off the street first officers. While I don't have the exact statistic in front of me, really the vast majority of folks that we've hired are new hire first officers that have the minimum hours required to be first officers. And they really come to us, one, from just hiring off the street, so to speak, and in addition through our cadet program. A smaller percentage, although we're averaging around, between 6 and 12 a month over the last few months, have been what we call the direct entry captains. And those are the pilots that have the hour requirements to immediately become captains.
What's the reason for the captain shortage? Is it those captains finding that they want to move on to the mainline carriers and they therefore exit your program maybe before you have the backfill of first officers? Or what's really causing that specific shortage in the captain side of the pilot population?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's really twofold. One, you highlighted it, and that's the hiring of the majors. As you probably well know, the majors are having their own retirement spike right now. When I talk about the majors, I'm talking about, the big three, and including also Southwest, you can include in that. So huge amount of mandatory retirements going on at the majors, and they're, essentially sucking up the pilots from the regionals, including Piedmont. So that's factor number one. The second reason is that during COVID, we didn't hire any pilots. And it takes approximately 2 years for a new hire first officer to get the hour requirements to be able to be a captain. So if you kind of look back 2 years, that's peak COVID, we weren't hiring. So we just don't have the pilots right now that have the hour requirements to upgrade. We'll get there, and the long-term solution is to, quote unquote, grow our own with our current crop of first officers, but it's gonna take a while, and that's why we're really incentivizing pilots that have the hours to join us from other airlines.
So you mentioned the top end of the age group being that retirement out as captains, right? And that's really a place where, honestly, every industry is hemorrhaging a lot of talent. Is you have the older folks who are reaching that retirement age and they are just naturally moving on out of their career time. We're not seeing on the young end of the generation the jump and the entrance into the job market. Some of this, specifically around flying and looking to become a pilot, has to do a lot with the fact that it's not a low barrier of entry, right? Flying is an expensive thing to do, whether you do it as a hobby or look to make it a career. When you're talking about trying to recruit that talent from literally the non-existent talent, or they have not entered the industry at all yet, looking to develop them from the ground up, is there any type of incentive or financial support that Piedmont offers as a regional carrier to get that talent fresh in the door and help them develop all the way from the ground up?
Yeah, no, you're completely right there. But I think what has happened, especially over the last year, is we've changed that return on investment picture. When I was becoming a pilot, it was difficult to justify the return on investment. When you look at all the time and energy and money it took to become a pilot, you really weren't getting it back when you joined a regional airline. you now are, right? I mean, that's what's changed. We now offer an economic package, the benefits, the compensation, and to be honest, something we haven't mentioned is the quality of life and the improvements we're making there that make it a lot more attractive to join an airline. And to be honest, I think we're seeing that. I mean, I think the interest we've had in low time FOs has been immense. We've been able to fill classes over the last few months. But again, where we're constrained and where our growth is constrained is really with the lack of captains.
So when you're recruiting captains, are you primarily seeing them come from other regional carriers, or are you seeing them come in from business aviation, maybe charter operators, 135 or 91? Or obviously you have to have some sort of type time, or are you pulling over from maybe some of the budget carriers that don't have as much, of a robust seniority system as some of the main carriers do? Where is the primary location that they're coming from when you're recruiting away from some of these other groups?
We're seeing them from all over. We really are. But one thing that has been interesting, in addition to all the different groups that you've mentioned, is we have seen pilots return to the industry. Maybe pilots that left in the Great Recession, that tried it out another career path. They're now being lured back into the aviation world by these compensation and benefit packages. And that's interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely a shift. I know that our own Sam Weigel has talked about this a lot in one of his columns, that when he first joined the regional, it wasn't necessarily something that you looked at as a career. You just looked at it as a stepping stone up into a major carrier. But now that narrative's kind of flipped on its head with some of the programs like what you guys are rolling out. So that's really interesting to see. I hope that you'll come back on for your next announcement. I'm sure that the recruitment efforts are not going to stop and that you're going to continue to need more pilots. So I'm sure that we'll have you back here on Business Air TV.
No, they're not. And I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks, Edward.
Have a very happy holiday. We're going to go ahead and take another quick break, and then we will be right back with our next live guest.
Piedmont Air Group is a refreshing take on the business jet industry. We have divisions in air charter, aircraft sales, and aircraft management, so we've evolved into a full-service private aviation enterprise. Since our founding in 2014, we really set out to be an elite provider with modern and transparent business practices. What started as a charter sales group then included a fully dedicated whole aircraft sales staff, and then it was just a few short years after that, Leviate acquired and began to grow an FAA air carrier, and now we operate business jets all around the world. With aviation professionals holding 100% ownership in the company, we're a true one-stop shop for clients wanting to do anything in the private aviation space. We've actually been tagged as the most transparent private aviation company in the world.
When guests come to an event like F3, we know what they want is a chance to show off their products, their swag, and make new partnerships that will last until our next FreightWaves event.
But the problem is there are so many industry events, it can be so hard to find the right one to invest your time and energy in. We at FreightWaves take your investment seriously.
Which is why we've brought together thousands of industry professionals in one city over 3 days to showcase all you have to offer.
Because your successful connections at an event like F3 move all of us forward.
Don't believe us?
Join us in June.
It's a good day coming.
Welcome back to Business Air TV, continuing this conversation about the pilot pipeline and what we can do to solve that pilot crisis. Preston, we've got Rob Polston joining us, who's the CEO over at Spartan Education Group, and we've got another great perspective.
Yeah, so as we explored the pilot pipeline, right, we just heard about the regionals really trying to recruit specifically the captains and first officers, but how are you actually going to fill that pipeline for the regional carriers, for the major carriers, for the business aviation groups, for the 91s, for the 135s? There's a lot of people that need pilots. One of the ways to do that is to get people from zero and ready to take on those careers. And so that's what we're going to explore today.
Absolutely. I'm one of those people that is like at ground zero, but I have this desire to move into the pilot space, right? And I'm like, how do I even get into the pilot pipeline to begin with? So Rob, I feel like that's a great place to start, right? Is like for someone like me who loves aviation, who has an interest, who maybe wants to make this eventually a lifetime career, how do you take that very first step into the pipeline through a group like Spartan?
Great to be on the call today. Thanks for having me, and happy holidays. There's actually, it's quite an easy route to get started. And thanks to shows like these, we're able to tell the story, because it's really the problem in the industry right now is not enough people know about the careers that are available in aviation. It's a kind of a hidden category and a career path for a lot of students. A lot of our students typically come, they actually come from a variety of different ways, to answer your question. We have students who come directly from high school, traditional students who are just getting out of high school, and they've heard about the career path and being a pilot, and they actually just start from what we call in our ab initio program, is right at 0 hours. So they come to our school in Tulsa. We also have a school in Denver, Colorado, called McAir Aviation, and they started ground zero. They have ground school, and then they begin their journey. And there's various certifications that you take: private pilot, instrument, commercial, get into multi-engine. And that typically takes between 12 and 17 months, depending on the program you're in at Spartan. And then from there, once you've accumulated approximately 250 hours and have your ratings through the FAA, you will then become what's called a certified flight instructor, where you'll need to accumulate another 1,000 to 1,250 hours of time building to prove that you're flying the plane, you have lots of experience before you go on to a regional airline or another carrier. So that's typically the path. It's ground and flight intensive at first, and then a lot of time building. And it takes about between, call it 1 year and 2.5 years with the time building, depending on your progression.
Rob, I think one of the things that everybody has, whether they're in leadership at a major carrier or anybody trying to do recruitment, is, and you're actually on the front line of this. You're seeing the students probably a lot earlier than when they actually get to the airlines. What's the narrative that needs to change around the pilot career in order to attract more students into that pilot pipeline?
Yeah, it's a great question. In the past, airlines have been able to go out and really recruit directly at colleges or universities, or traditional ones, I would mostly say, in this country. And then they're also able to recruit through their normal, interest that they get from people jumping from another airline, or maybe have gone out of the industry and have come back. That has all changed. As maybe you know from this summer, there was a ton of press around the shortage of pilots and crews in general, and mechanics. Not enough people to fly the planes, and not enough people to maintain the planes. And that's going to be something that's something that's going to go on for the next 10 years. And Boeing actually projects it to go on for the next 20 years. So airlines are starting to take a different, more proactive approach. You've heard of some schools that have started. We have a different, and I would say blended approach with airlines. We recently announced a partnership with Allegiant Airlines, one of the leading ultra low-cost carriers in the country, where we have partnered to be their exclusive school in order to find, recruit, train, and develop pilots specifically for Allegiant, which they've never done before. They've always relied on recruiting really great pilots out in the open market. There's just not enough of them anymore, and there's a bidding war. So we want to not only want to have a pipeline of cadets for Allegiant, but we also want to create pilots that are specifically learning about Allegiant and in their pathway as from day one when they're starting the program. We also announced last month, or the month before, I should say, that we have joined the American Cadet Academy as their only collegiate school in what has been, I think, a very successful program for American. They were very early on to form an academy, and we have now joined as their collegiate partner. So what you're seeing, to answer your question, is traditional recruitment. Airlines going out and recruiting people who either have some certifications, are already in the market, and then are looking for an opportunity at a different airline, or they're trying to take more proactive approach to their human capital, which is what Spartan is, and our higher ed approach is to recruit directly into our program at 0 hours, and then help build these cadets for that specific airline from the very beginning. And that's a big change from what has gone on in the industry for years and years, where there wasn't this huge pilot shortage. But to give you an example of the need out there for the listeners, there are about 4,000 new pilots created every year in the United States, and I would say that's a very generous number of pilots. The actual number of pilots that are needed are over 10,000 to fill the gap right now, and the numbers are getting larger because pilots are required to retire at age 65. So there's a lot of job opportunities out there in the industry. They're well published. You can read it in the popular press. You can see it, even government has been concerned with the Secretary of Transportation and others talking about this issue, because it's going to affect small towns. It's going to affect service to communities. And, we're all used to being able to get on a plane and go somewhere. That's not been the case for the last 6 months, and it's going to be a bigger problem in the future here. So, I think people like American, Allegiant, and then some other good airlines out there have decided that they need a different approach, a pipeline to build in addition to recruiting out in the open market. And that's really what the major change that's gone on.
So, Rob, I am someone who is super passionate about diversity and equity and inclusion in any industry that I'm in, but specifically when it comes to male-dominated industries. I'm someone who went through my collegiate career in a major that was predominantly men, and being in the aviation industry, that's a place where we see female pilots holding a really small percentage of those airline jobs, but also just entrance into the industry as well. At Spartan, are you guys seeing more interest from a more diverse group of candidates coming through your school and then into the airline program? And are you guys offering initiatives, things that really help get folks who might traditionally not see being a pilot or being in aviation at all as an accessible career, and getting them into it and really opening up and diversifying that pool of talent?
Absolutely, and it needs to be done. First of all, it's the right thing to do, and it's very aspirational. And number two is the industry would benefit from more qualified pilots from whatever walk of life. At Spartan, I think we're a lot different than the industry. We have students. To answer your question, there are many, many more women who are now getting involved in aviation than we have ever seen in the past, and good percentages. But the predominance still is white males. But it is different at Spartan. We have a lot of students who are first-time college students coming from families of very diverse backgrounds. For instance, we have a partnership with the Cherokee Nation, because we're based in Tulsa, and they're sending students to Spartan. We have students of many nationalities and backgrounds, and international students coming. So I think the more traditional universities and there has been where the supply has traditionally come from, which is too small to fill the need, has been more of a predominantly white male profile. I think schools like Spartan, which are much more, tend to be more diverse because the programs are shorter, the cost is less than, quite a bit less than universities. We tend to attract students who are really looking to gain the skill set and maybe haven't come from a traditional background. So the short answer again is absolutely. We're encouraging people of any background who have an interest in flying. And it is really great to see more and more women. I think American has done a very nice job, and some of the other airlines too, of really promoting this initiative around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think because of that, the awareness of the category for students, people are saying, yeah, you know what, I never thought about that as a career. And you know what, I never thought about it because I was a woman, or I never thought about it because it was never in my consideration set. Those barriers are starting to break down because people are communicating that it is really an open profession looking for the best people.
Rob, I've got one last question for you. Spartan was started in 1928. Flying was actually started in 1927, so we share a very similar legacy and long-term. What are you as a leader thinking about? What does the future look like for Spartan? What is something that you're thinking about as a leader that you're trying to push your organization to think about maybe for the next 5 or 10 years, or even the next 100 years?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a very long history. I'm really proud to be the chief executive of this company. What I'm thinking about right now is solving the problem for our partners. Recruiting the highest quality students. We're not just talking about one of the particulars of the industry right now is this is an apprenticeship business. It takes time to learn how to be an effective pilot. It takes time to learn how to be cognizant of everything that goes on in the cockpit, because you're a leader. And that process of maturation is going very, very quickly right now. It's required because people are moving out from the first officer seat to the captain seat because there's not a big enough pipeline, so everything's getting forced. So what we're really looking at in our company is really three things. We want people to know more about Spartan. It's one of the larger independent non-university traditional universities in this country that actually can provide the type of education you need to become a pilot in a relatively short period of time, 12 to 17 months, a year or two of time building, depending on your commitment to it. And you can be in the airlines in a short period of time. That's not the case with universities. So we want to get our name out there and let people know there are other alternatives than the traditional university system that are more efficient, more cost effective, and can get you on your career path. The second thing we do is we're really higher education oriented. We're not a training school or company. We are educators who are really about personal development as well as professional. So we do a lot of training around also becoming that mature, hopefully that mature pilot earlier than you would have if you had just gone and done, your FAA certifications elsewhere. That's the value that a 92-year-old or 94-year-old company can bring, is all of that years of higher ed. So I'm challenging my team and our partners to think differently, to think about recruitment differently, and really change the culture of pilot recruitment, and ultimately what happens at the airlines to be a very positive environment that can be a long-lasting career.
Well, Rob, thank you so much for helping shed a little bit of light about what you guys are doing, and I'm sure that we will have you back on soon.
Really appreciate the time. Thanks for having me. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Thanks, Rob.
I think, Preston, hear me out on this idea. I've got an idea for us.
All right.
We send Kaylee Nix to Spartan and put me through a training program. And it's just like I'm the boots on the ground, I'm the wings in the air, the first person perspective, and we report on it.
That would be great, although I fear that given what Piedmont was talking about and everybody else is talking about, that I might have to fly solo without you because you're going to the airline, so we'll have to check that out.
Can we put some space in the 2023 budget for that?
I'm sure.
Maybe? All right, thanks guys for that. Love to see it. Love talking about DEI and seeing that as well in the industry. All right, we're gonna go ahead and toss it back to meteorologist Dr. Scott Dennsteadt for a second update on this massive winter storm hitting the country.
Yeah, thanks, Kaylee. Earlier in the show, I showed an expansive and intense upper-level trough battering the Great Lakes and upper Midwest, producing blizzard-like conditions and snow squalls in some locations. And that trough will continue to basically develop and move further east with time into the weekend. So that trough is expected to kind of shift up into the southern part of Ontario, Canada, and up into Quebec over the next couple of days into the Christmas weekend. And eventually it will become a thing of the past. But meanwhile, we're going to be basically dealing with that significant weather over the next several days. So if we look at the prog charts to show you how that we call essentially is determining as a bomb cyclone, we have this very intense area of low pressure, and watch how it kind of comes together, produces a pretty significant area of low pressure here, a 969 central low. Again, it's called a bomb cyclone, and it's going to bring in that cold air behind this and essentially continue to produce strong gusty winds in many areas, and even the possibility of even some convection, some thunderstorms along the coastal regions in New England for the next couple of days. And we won't really get rid of this weather system well until we get into Christmas Eve on Saturday and eventually into Sunday, where some of that area of weather will continue to produce the possibility of some lake effect snow moving into those regions around the downwind of Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. And we do have a little, we call it Alberta Clipper, moving down into the northern plains on Christmas Day, but it's going to run into pretty dry air and cold air. Won't make much of that over the next the day after Christmas and such. So travel days should improve pretty significantly as we get into the Christmas weekend and beyond. So if we look at that kind of different weather depiction here, so we get essentially that forecast radar depiction. You'll see here what's happening at least at the along that line of convection, or actually snow squalls that is occurring here. You can see there's that snow squall that's moving through today, and that will continue to push east as the weather system develops. And again, most of the trouble is going to be way up here in the northeast over the weekend, into Friday, into Saturday, and then finally that does push out, and we get that backside of that area pulling in some of that moisture, continuing to build snow downwind of Lake Michigan and Lake Erie and Ontario over the next day through the Christmas holiday into the Monday timeframe. So improving weather for sure in that area. So let's in this particular situation, for weather updates throughout the week, Tuesday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. Eastern, and check out and subscribe to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/@EZWXBrief. Well, that's the outlook through the holiday weekend, and have a safe and very Merry Christmas, everyone. Back to you in the studio.
All right, big thanks to Dr. Scott Dennsteadt for being here and giving us those weather updates. Preston, that does it for us here today on Business Air TV. And this is actually our last show of the year. So we're going to take off that week between Christmas and New Year's and get some extra family time in, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody's going to stay warm because there's a blizzard coming. And maybe make some snow angels, maybe throw some snowballs back and forth. So.
Maybe if there was snow in Chattanooga, which there never is.
Yeah, that's very true. We live in the Tennessee River Valley, and the snow seems to stay to the west or to the east of us, and then we just get cold and
miserable and it's awful. So Preston, because this is it for the year, just wanted to say thank you guys for letting me on and for kicking this off. We've got a big year coming in 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being on here, and stick with us at Business Air TV, flyingmag.com, Flying Magazine on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. I found out that we have a Pinterest account, so check us out there too, and we will talk to you soon.
Check out the full list of these companies and all the latest freight tech news at freightwaves.com.
Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Check Call. Check Call. Check Call. Let's go. Nobody works for free, so why should we be expecting our drivers to? Okay, let's just get it together now. What are some of those proactive steps that you can start taking now? For myself, I would like the Earth to still be here for a little bit longer, but you know, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh, okay. Is pizza an open-faced sandwich? It's bread.
I have been ready for this question. I've seen the show.
We're all in this together.
Thanks for making me hungry. Now I want a hot dog.
You're welcome. Catch episodes of Check Call Tuesdays at 12:30 on Freightwaves TV. Keep up with all things Check Call on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.
FreightWaves is the #1 source for transportation and logistics news. FreightWaves.com provides you with in-depth news coverage, data, and insights from the leading industry journalists and market experts. On FreightWaves.com, you can also watch the only streaming TV network dedicated to freight. FreightWaves TV provides you with coverage you won't find anywhere else. However you like your news delivered, check us out online or on the FreightWaves app.